when I say cycles in jobs and the job market is cycling down, what I mean is from where it was, right? We were adding quite a lot of jobs, several 100,000 jobs, over 500,000 jobs in some cases per month. And now I think I don't have the exact data in front of me. We're going to get something this on Friday, and I think it'll continue to be the case that we're probably at 2-something year lows in the growth rate year over year. The guesstimate today is 195 for Friday. Maybe if that's true, that's a slowdown continuing. Yeah. And if it's weaker than that, then it's more of a slowdown. Okay. Employment is roughly coincident with the business cycle. Now I'm speaking over a century. Okay. I'm jumping around here. So I'm speaking over half a century, a century. If you look at all these cycles, accelerations, decelerations, recessions, recoveries, all these things, employment is roughly coincident. Sometimes it peaks a little soon, sometimes it peaks a little later. We've had jobless recoveries, all these kind of things have happened, okay? And so that's very much the case today in the mirror image way. Inflation, more often than not, will follow growth, but enough times it doesn't. There's probably a quarter of the time that it leads growth a little bit, so it's interesting to have some defense against that. In the current cycle, no, in the current kind of narrative, hey, we've got a weakening economy, maybe even a recession, that's going to kill inflation. I agree. Okay. But it doesn't happen the way most people think. Most people think that, it's obvious that there's a hard landing, so therefore recession's coming down, inflation's coming down, so don't worry about it. Actually, inflation won't get near its weaker readings until well after the recession, which hasn't yet to be acknowledged or defined, is over. So that's not now.
Right.
That's a long time from now. Okay, so now let's flip over to inflation for a second. And then I'm going to start bouncing back and forth between inflation and jobs. On inflation, it's cyclical. It had been very, very low in the previous decade, following the great financial crisis and the Great Recession. Part of the reason, a really big part of the reason that it was low was because we were importing disinflation around the whole goods sector of our economy, mostly from China. And they had just a gargantuan amount of stimulus that they were kind of footing the bill on the production of a lot of stuff and selling it cheap here to keep their economy revving, or for whatever reason. That happened. And that allowed all kinds of pretty experimental, dare I say, or aggressive or non-traditional monetary policy to be put into the markets and the economy without inflation really getting out of control last decade. Post GFC up until kind of COVID stuff. So then COVID is a massive shock, right? It's a quick recession, recovery, which we nailed, and then quite a lot of stimulus, right? That we all talked about.
Bananas amount of stimulus when you look at it from a historically relevant standpoint, but yes.
There's like a huge amount of stimulus, and we have this, and we have that whatever debate about inflation. Our future inflation gauge, leading indicator of inflation, went to a 40-year high, like a rocket ship. Right?
And when did it hit that? I'm curious.
It was doing that in 2020 when it was like, hey, is the recession over? and so then you run into that transitory stuff, and it saw right through all of that. Now, when the Fed starts to hike rates, it's doing it very gingerly, right? To begin with, its heart wasn't in it until last summer, almost a year ago. It starts to go 75
right.
A meeting, And that's really when people started to talk recession. Before that, yield curve inverts, all these things happen. And before that, we were much more alone in our recession forecast. We forecasted about publicly about a year ago, which is that's a long time ago, I will admit. And so lots of people are saying, hey, you said there was going to be a recession, it's not here yet. I mean, we probably have 100 leading indicators for around the world. We do it for probably 14 or 15 for the United States, services, construction, overall economy, manufacturing. And then, very importantly, for the world, for 22 economies around the world, they all tanked, right? So post-COVID, China went into a recession for the first time since 1989. Not a lot of people understand that, right? And of course, Europe and other major economies into recession as well. And so we have a setup because of the missed inflation cycle upturn, where policy by and large around the world is tightening. Chinese were one exception. They didn't tighten because they're concerned. But by and large around the world, everybody's tightening, while the leading indicators before the Fed started to go hard were already recessionary. That's unusual. So there's a lot of unusual things happening, right? And that's super unusual. Again, it's kind of a, there's the whole discussion about the Fed and how they go about policy. We got to put that on the side. It's too big. There's the post-COVID environment. And then there's this catch up, or whatever you want to call it, where the central banks, in order to maintain their credibility, have to fight inflation really hard into a recession. And the way inflation works is it often rises into a recession. It can do that. It's ancient history, but in 2008, oil hit 140 something bucks 6 months inside of a recession. So, and the bank was promising, the Fed was telling the markets, and the markets believed them, in May, June of 2008, 6 months inside a recession, that they were raising rates by 100 basis points by December. I mean, so that's how it looks like inside a recession when people don't believe there's a recession.
Right.
Markets can get that out of whack.